Hey everybody, welcome to the Song Revolution podcast, brought to you by Nashville Christian Songwriters. Nashville Christian Songwriters exists to empower Christian songwriters worldwide. I'm John Chisholm, and this podcast exists to bring you valuable songwriting insights, inspiration, interviews, and just all around good fun with some of the greatest songwriters, producers, arrangers, artists, and creatives, and beyond. You can find out a whole lot more about us at NashvilleChristianSongwriters.com. Hey everybody, John Chisholm here. Welcome to the Song Revolution podcast. I am having a phenomenal time doing this show. I've gotten to meet some amazing people. Last week I had Jonathan Cain from Journey. Don't stop believing. Okay, forgive me for doing that. But anyway, I have to do that every time I say that. And I don't know how many times I used the word journey in that podcast. It was almost embarrassing, but you use the word more than you'd think. And we'd talk about his songwriting journey or his spiritual journey or all the journeys. But anyway, it got to be kind of ridiculous. But check out that podcast. It's just a great one, and he's a great guy. My new BFF, Jonathan Cain from Journey. But this week, I get to share with you another phenomenal new friend, Aaron Shust. Aaron earned a reputation as one of Christian music's most compelling songwriters and a vocalist that is just so great, deep, compassionate. He was named both New Artist and Songwriter of the Year at the 2007 Gospel Music Association Dove Awards. And you know his song, My Savior, My God. It was recognized that year as Song of the Year, and he's just continued to build on that over these last 10 years. He's known for such hits as My Hope Is in You, which spent 14 weeks at number one, No One Higher, which was on Inspirational charts, and Ever Be, which made its way to number 3 on some charts, and his Christmas song, Oh Come O Come Emmanuel, has become a perennial holiday favorite. And you know what? He's just a great guy. So we sat down a few weeks ago at the Centricity Music offices, and we just kind of had a chat. We talked about the weather and the trees and his creaky old Jeep, and just a lot of songwriting things, touring things, family, and just kind of chatted. It was great. So my new BFF, Aaron Shust. I hope you have a great time today on the Song Revolution podcast. Well, hey, Aaron, welcome to the show, man. I'm glad you're here.
Great being here.
Yeah, we both drove out to Centricity today. Mm-hmm. A little drive from our houses. We kind of live in the same neighborhood, actually.
Yeah, it's very close, but it's a lovely day out here. And so I was saying I drove over in my Jeep, my squeaky Jeep. I think something's wrong with the shocks or the suspension, because the people who I drive past are covering their ears when I drive. It's loud, but it's a beautiful day, and the sun's shining in Tennessee. It's lovely.
Oh, man. Yeah, it is fun. I mean, this is October, and it's just beautiful. Colors aren't in yet, and I don't know, with the dryness and all that kind of stuff.
We've had a pretty damp summer, I guess you could say. So maybe with a little bit of sunshine and the temperatures are going to drop. That's what I've heard, because I'm a weather buff. Yeah. That's what I've heard is what makes a brilliant fall. We'll see.
And you're not native Tennessean either.
I'm not. I'm from Could you not tell by my accent, my Tennessee? No, I'm from Pennsylvania. But I did live, so I grew up in Pennsylvania, but I lived 17 years in Georgia, which was just enough to make all my Yankee friends think I have a Southern accent.
There you go.
And yet all my Southern friends think I still hold on to a Yankee accent.
Well,
so I guess I'm somewhere in the middle.
Yeah, you're hybrid, man.
I'm a hybrid.
You're kind of like camping out on the Mason-Dixon or something.
That's what it is. I didn't live too far from the Mason-Dixon.
Yeah, so do you say y'all?
Occasionally, and when I do, I know it, and it feels strange.
It's unnatural.
It's unnatural, but it does make so much more sense than in Pittsburgh they say yins, which is horrible.
Like Ewans?
I think it came from like the West Virginia mountains, U-ones. Like one, but plural, U-ones.
Right, U-ones.
And it turned into yins. Then you get yins guys, and there's even a possessive yinses.
No,
it's hysterical. And I've never really been guilty of saying that, but
yinses?
Yinses. Hey, where's Yinses potato salad? Did you bring the potato salad? I can't find Yinses stuff.
Wow.
I'm ashamed.
No, don't be ashamed, but it sounds like, I don't know, kind of like Appalachian or something.
Very Appalachian. Absolutely Appalachian.
Wow. Yeah. Wow. Well, we're the singing Yinsens.
The singing Yinses? They call the people who are like native Pittsburghers Yinsers. Yinzers.
No kidding.
Yeah, it's kind of like a self-imposed nickname.
That's kind of like in Michigan, the people from the UP are Yoopers.
Yoopers? Yeah, I've never heard that.
Yeah, no kidding.
How about
Yoopers,
that?
Yeah.
That's beautiful. Where it's warm for 1 month of the year. It's a beautiful part of the country.
It's really more like a day, but
it's still gorgeous.
But in Michigan, man, that whole area up there is just drop dead beautiful. People don't realize it, and
it's spectacular. When we were living up in Pittsburgh, I had a gig in Traverse City, or Gaylord actually, and we spent 3 days in Traverse City. We went to the Sleeping Bear Dunes, those massive sand dunes.
People don't know about it.
Gorgeous, yeah.
It was voted the most beautiful place in America.
Really?
Like, I don't know, 4 or 5 years ago.
Hey, I believe it. I'm not even shocked.
I know.
I believe it.
It is. It's absolutely fantastic. But we're not here to talk about Michigan.
Not Michigan. Not the globe. Not the mitten.
But you're back. I mean, you guys Yinzes have moved. Now, am I
speaking a language I can understand?
Am I using that correctly?
Yes, you sure are.
Yinzes moved to Nashville a little while back.
Yeah, a little over a year ago. So God just kind of uprooted. We were completely content spending the rest of our days in Pittsburgh, which is as I mentioned, where I grew up, and we had moved back there. That's 5 years? Nope, 10 years. 10 years into our marriage, moved to my hometown in Pittsburgh. My wife's from Florida. And we just wanted to settle into a community, into a small church, my home church, the same church where my grandmother was saved right after World War II.
No kidding.
And I was leading worship in this small church of, I think there were about 120, 130 members.
No joke.
So maybe 200 maybe 250 on a great Sunday. But man, it was so real. And the relationships were just tight, and they were old relationships, and there were new relationships, people coming in, and it was an old church. They just celebrated their 100th. I say they because I'm in Nashville now. Celebrated their 100th anniversary, but there's a lot of new life, a lot of new fire. And so we were there for 7 years, and before then I had led worship at a larger church in Atlanta, and then I got to lead worship at a really small church in Pittsburgh, and so to experience both, leading with a lot of people and a lot of resources, and leading with very little resources.
Wow.
But the same spirit was there.
Isn't that awesome?
And it was a great experience.
So you were at Perimeter, right?
Yep, Presbyterian Church in Atlanta. From 2000, that was my first real job. From 2000 to on staff from 2005. But I continued to contract with them for the next few years, leading on Sundays, even though I was not on full-time staff.
Wow.
There's a little switch up there.
Great people. I've heard great things about that church.
Yes.
I've actually driven past it one time.
You have to stop in sometime. Laura Story leads there now.
Oh, does she?
Yeah, she's been there. We overlapped for a couple months. They Perimeter just celebrated their 40th anniversary in September, and so I drove down for there, and they gathered in one of the local arenas. And Laura and I shared a little B stage for a few minutes and played a couple songs and bantered back and forth. And she joked that I was working there for a while, and then she came in and took my job. And that's not exactly how it worked out, but we like to pretend like it is, that she took my job. Wow. She's been leading worship there for a while. Wow. It's a great church. Yeah. Fantastic church. Randy Pope's been the pastor there since its beginning 40 years ago.
Wow.
Solid theology. And
Same
great
pastor
worship.
for 40 years.
Yeah.
Wow. That doesn't happen all that often.
No, he's going strong, and he's highly respected.
Doesn't happen for worship leaders either, very much.
No, you don't hear about that. 40 years? That's unheard of.
Wow. But so from Pennsylvania, you wound up in Georgia for a long time, and you have some classical background. Is it Toccoa Falls?
Toccoa Falls is the college that I went to. And when I say, I think to a degree that gets blown out of proportion when you're taking any kind of music lessons. And maybe Nashville is the exception, where and maybe some of the larger cities like New York and LA might be an exception as well, where when you take a music lesson like guitar or piano, you learn pop. But everywhere else on the planet, you pretty much study the classics.
Yeah.
So classically trained, starting from 7th grade, I'm learning the scales. I'm learning my arpeggios. I have a teacher that I go to every week for a half hour, just classic, normal piano lessons.
Right.
But I worked really hard at it, or I should say my mother made me work really hard at it. Whether I enjoyed it or not is up for debate. But I was good. And I've joked, but I think I'm quite serious when I say I was probably better in 7th grade than I am now on piano. And the way teachers music teachers get judged so that they can maintain their status, and their job is not through their playing ability, but through the playing ability of their students.
Exactly.
And so they're going to handpick the students that they think are going to best represent them. And I feel like I'm bragging about my son because it was so long ago, but she picked me often. And I felt the stress of, I need to perform really well because her credentials depend on my performance. And I was aware of that in 7th and 8th grade. My mom finally realized the stress that I was under, and she let me quit.
Wow.
I probably didn't touch the keys for a year. And then I remember sitting down one Sunday evening, and I heard, apparently there's some 1950s rock version of Flight of the Bumblebee. Just an instrumental, a little drum, just picture like a little jazz drum kit. And I'm like, well, that sounds fun. It had a little boogie woogie in the left hand, and so I sat down at the piano and I picked it out by ear. And it was laborious and full of mistakes, but at the end of it, it was so satisfying that I didn't sit down in front of a piece of sheet music and plunk it out. I heard it, and I transferred what I was hearing to my fingers, even though it took a while. And the joy of playing by ear was born even after 8 years of a classical background. And then, so that was all of high school, just playing by ear, having fun like that. And then I was a music major in college with a concentration in high school chorus. So they had to have a concentration in voice. And I don't have natural vibrato at all, so that was an uphill battle because I'm basically learning all these songs in Italian and German and like operas and oratorios, but I have no vibrato. I've just got a straight old voice. But everyone has to minor in piano. So again, I'm taking 4 years of piano lessons on the college level. So that helped with, just technique and fingering and learning more Mozart and stuff like that.
Yeah, very cool. And it sets you up to win later in life when you become a Christian songwriter and worship leader and all those things.
It helps to have the tools, even if you don't always employ them. To have the tool chest available.
Right.
And I always tell kids when I meet them on the road, and I'm like, they're standing next to their parents, and like, hey, our little boy is he's taking piano lessons. He doesn't enjoy it very much. I'm like, you know what? And I'll just talk to the kid. It's usually a little boy who wants to quit because he wants to play whatever, football or baseball with his friends. I'm like, man, I love playing piano, and I get to do it for a living. I get to play piano. I get to play every day of my life. That's what it's called when you play piano and play guitar. I said, but man, take those lessons. Learn that. Cool. No one likes scales, but you got to practice those scales. You got to practice all that stuff and the chords and learn the theory, and then let that equip you to play more.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And it is fun to watch you go back and forth from the keys to your guitar.
Oh, thank you.
In your new video. And, it
right.
breaks it up. It gives it some variety, and it shows your diversity.
And I think, we were talking earlier before we, started recording just we're talking about Tom. And, we were talking about the fact that as a worship leader, I've admitted before that I don't jump around the stage too much. Maybe I could. Maybe it's not my personality.
Right.
I kind of just... Well, as a worship leader, I'm trying to not draw attention to myself. I'm trying to draw attention to Jesus. So what I do is I'm leading people in singing, and I want my body language to be engaging. I want my body language to be infectious, and I want it to exude joy and passion and whatever I'm trying to, so that people can follow along. But I pretty much stand behind a microphone.
Yeah.
And so the ability to jump from piano to guitar, and I try not to do back and forth too much. I kind of make like a concert, a block on guitar, and then a block on piano, and then maybe back to guitar. And I'm about to get electronics put in my ukulele so I can have just that third little thing, a little bit different, like for a song or two.
It's great though.
Yeah,
or even to step away from the instruments altogether and just do something vocally.
You know what I started doing? It's not completely that, but I started doing one song. It depends on if it's an outdoor show, it doesn't make sense. But if the venue is right, I'll do one song truly unplugged. Mm-hmm. I'll unplug the guitar. I step down off the stage into the, whether it's a little thrust or just on the floor or the very tip of the stage, off the microphone though. And I'll do one song completely off mic. And completely, truly unplugged. We use the word unplugged, meaning acoustic. But that's, literally I unplug it. And it's a special moment in the night. It kind of makes people realize, oh wow, this is happening. It breaks that fourth wall down, right, between the stage and the congregation or the artist. I'm talking in a concert setting, not in a worship leading setting, but in a concert setting, I'll do that. Mix it up a little bit.
Well, you referred to Tom Jackson, who is a live music producer. We've had him on the show. And he's an interesting guy. He's been around a long, long time. I remember seeing him 25 years ago when he was starting, and he's been on 3 tours with Taylor Swift. I mean, this is no schlocky guy, right?
No, right.
And a lot of the songwriters listening, I think you'd do yourself a favor to go back and check out that show, because he really talks about how the body language and he talked about creating moments, in the show, and the songs have to lend themselves. So that is a little different than worship leading per se, but and we have different schools of thought on that. I always loved having on the wireless mic and, trying to move around and engage people and, kind of pull them in. But, I probably sinned and shouldn't have drawn so much attention to myself. Oh, well.
No,
God,
listen,
God forgive me now.
There's different genres and I hear you. I think of Kirk Franklin. And talking about someone who roams around and the poor camera crew can't find him half the time. He's somewhere in the auditorium, but he's leading people in worship and they are having a blast. Yeah. For me to do that I'd be acting like someone else. It'd be disingenuous. So you have to find your niche and yet be to sound like an army slogan, be the best you can be within that niche. Yeah. And to be, I think one thing Tom would do for me, Tom Jackson, is force me out of my comfort zone. To do things that I'm not comfortable doing that only because I've never done it. I've tried the roaming thing. I've tried taking the microphone off the stand and putting the guitar down and walking around left and right. I gave it the old college try. Yeah. And at the end of the day, I just said, no, that's not me.
But you're still creating moments, even standing there.
Sure.
You're drawing people in and
that's the attempt, especially when it comes to a concert. And my concerts are still going to be more leaning toward the worship experience, but I'm going to have talking moments in between where I'm talking about life, or I'm talking about what my kids did last week that made me think of the love of God, which sets up this next song.
Or the wrath.
Or the wrath. What I did to my kids. Yeah, what
or
my
the
kids
fear
did.
of God that you're going to instill in them really quickly.
True,
right?
True.
Too funny. Once a parent, always a parent. Yep. Well, let's move into talking a little bit about how you got into this whole thing, because, when I look back and see that kind of your first breakthrough album seemed to be around 2007, but you got at least one thing kind of going on before that, 2005. So give us the overview back, kind of how'd you get into this?
Yeah, I think I didn't mess around with songwriting. At least, I had a little song that I wrote with just music when I was a kid. But as far as writing a song with words, it was the traumatic event, not overly traumatic. But just leaving home after high school, choosing for a reason beyond my imagination to go to a college states away, and realizing at the end of August I'm about to leave everything I know. And moved to where? Georgia? Some small town in Georgia. This Yankee kid's going to move to Georgia and start going to school. And I didn't know then I was going to study music. I was going to be a youth pastor until I realized that I had to take a camping class, and I hate camping. So I'm like, I'm not sure this is for me. And someone said, why don't you do music? I'm like, that makes so much sense because I've been doing music my entire life. Why don't I put my eggs in that basket instead? But there was a girl that I liked. And always a girl, right? Yeah. There's a girl. Well, I found out the day before I left for Georgia for good that she liked me back, and that was enough to make me start writing a song. Not for her to hear. It was just an emotion that needed to be expressed, But then shortly after that, I started writing a song that was about my spiritual journey. So it was a song about life. It was a song about faith. It was a song about my faith in who God is and who God says he is. It wasn't a worship song. I didn't start writing worship songs until I found myself in an arena, we'll say. And I don't mean an arena, in an area, I should say, where my audience was a congregation. I was employed at a church in 2000. And week after week, Sunday after Sunday, there were people that were standing in front of me on the other side of the microphone called the congregation. And I started thinking, man, what if I just wrote songs for them? That's my audience now. My audience is the same people that come to church every week. Let's write songs that they can sing. Whenever I ask them to stand and the words show up on the screen, they're singing to God. What if I wrote songs for them to sing to God? And so that's early 2000s. started writing all these songs. Eventually, one of the guys in my worship team said, hey, I've always had this dream of building a studio and recording music in my basement. So basically, if I build it, will you come? Is how that went down. And so I said, absolutely. We made a record with the whole purpose of selling it in the church bookstore. And then a local record label named Brash in Atlanta said, hey, we're interested in this. We want to sign you. And they released what I had released to the church bookstore in 2004. They released nationally in 2005.
Oh, okay.
And so there's your 2005 that you see. And that had My Savior, My God on it.
Right.
That went to radio. I think it hit number 1 in April of 2006. And so then the Dove Awards in 2007 were for that 2005 album.
I gotcha.
So it's interesting, like for me, starting singing my first solo in church from when I was 3, piano lessons at 7, going to college for music, working at a church all of my 20s, not signing a record deal till I was almost 30. But the first record did well. People would say like, hey, tell us about like your skyrocketing success. I'm like, I appreciate that you think that. I've been doing this my entire life. I thought I was going to get signed to a record deal at 21, but it didn't. Nothing happened. There was no interest. So I just kept doing it. Tried to make wise decisions like going to college to get a degree in music education. I didn't jump straight to hitting the road. I got a degree and I started working at a church with a full-time job to hone my skills, but also to put food on the table. So it was an interesting thing when people who have never heard of you, and then the next day they've heard of you, they think that you did this overnight.
Isn't that something?
It's a lifelong pursuit.
Yeah, and how wild is that something you could have never dreamed would be happening? Yeah, you did a custom record and had that song on it.
Yeah.
And the Brash, the label, picked it up. Yep. And then, boom, you have a song that you're singing, 12 years later, right?
Night after night after night.
And that's the one
We knew it was, and the song that you're speaking of, My Savior, My God, I remember coming across those lyrics. It's an old hymn. With the exception of the chorus, which I wrote, right, and the music's new for the whole thing, but the lyrics of the verses are old. And I had the Tyndale 1-year book of hymns. It's the 10-year, the 1 year. I think they had the 1-year Bible, and they also made a companion, like a 1-year book of hymns. That had a little background of the story behind how this hymn was written. So in the 1860s, Dora Greenwell, British lady, wrote this hymn called I Am Not Skilled to Understand.
Wow.
And I'm reading through these titles, just flipping through, trying to find some unearthed hymn that we could sing in church. The whole purpose was to find hymns to play for church. And I'm like, well, that's a strange title. And so, I'm reading through the words, and I'm just so moved by these words of confession. Like, hey, I don't understand all of God's ways. His, Isaiah 55:8, his ways are higher than our ways. His thoughts are higher than our thoughts. I was like, this resonates with me. This is probably going to resonate with my people, my church. Let's repackage this old hymn that I've never even heard of. I grew up in the church and never heard of this thing. Now, I guess in the UK it was very popular, but in the US it was not very popular. And so I just, put new music to it, and the response from my people at my church was strong. It was a year and a half before I even wrote the chorus. We were just singing the verses. And just the confession of like, God, I don't have all things figured out, but I trust you was strong. And I thought, man, there's something I want to do to this song to make it exalt, because it was kind of a low-key song. It was just kind of chill.
Really?
Just kind of, if you think, the biggest part of the song, before I wrote the chorus, the biggest part of the song was that he would leave his place on high and come for sinful men to die. But it kind of floated around, I am not skilled to understand. It was just a chill, plodding song. It was it was a relaxing song, which is good. But I thought there's something so exciting about this concept that I want to write some lyrics and write a chorus that just makes you want to throw your fist up in the air. Mm-hmm. And that's where
does that?
My Savior love, da 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 da. Yeah. My Savior's up. And I wrote it at a red light, leaving rehearsal one night. Before the light turned green, it came to me. I had a red Sharpie in the passenger seat in the same Jeep that's sitting out in the parking lot right
Love
here.
It.
Same Jeep. And a red Sharpie and a yellow Wendy's napkin. And I just scribbled down those words before that light turned green. And put the two together kind of smashed them together. I wasn't even sure if they would work together. I thought maybe these are two separate songs. But I was in the church setting. I was constantly, we were trying to write songs for the church. And there was no, oh, I hope it makes it to radio. Oh, I hope the record label approves it. It was just like, we're going to write this song and we're going to do it next Sunday. It's going to get used and God's going to be worshiped through this song. And if it doesn't catch on, then probably 2 years from now, we won't be playing it anymore. The people will let us know. And whether or not, if it's really bad, they'll say, please stop playing it. If it's really good, they'll say, that was amazing. Can we do that again? And if they really don't have an opinion, they probably won't say anything.
Right.
But we'll know. And it's good. I mean, talk about songwriting and having an, what's the word I'm looking for? A soundboard of people to say, and whether it's close friends, whether it is a record label, because now it's what I've got an A&R team here that says, man, Aaron, that song's not as good as you think it is. Or, we're not really feeling that song, but you're telling us that it really works in concert. Tell us more about that. So I can say, yeah, I mean, this is like, people love this song in concert. And not everyone's going to feel the same thing. And there's all the stories about the songs that you think, surely this one's not going to work. And it does. And there are probably more stories, the opposite. Surely this song's going to work. And it doesn't. Yeah. So it's a really interesting thing, art.
Yeah, it totally is. And you just brought up a point that I talk with a lot with my clients or with aspiring songwriters. And the number one thing that the people I deal with, and you probably run into them too at your concerts, the people that run up and they want to give you a CD of their songs, and that type of thing. The number one thing that most everyone believes, it's a myth, is that if they can get in front of the right people, these mythical, mysterious right people, then suddenly they'll be recognized. Suddenly their songs will be on the radio and you'll record them and, everybody will just think they're amazing. And I've started telling people, you're already in front of the right people.
Yes.
And that's what you just demonstrated with your story, is that you wrote that for the people God had given you to touch week in and week out. And that was the proving ground, the sounding board. That was the laboratory. And they were the ones who gave you that approval and approbation that then later, expanded into however many hundreds of thousands or millions of people. But it was there first. That's where it was proven. So these people are already in front of the right people, whether that's a spouse or kids or church or small group.
Couldn't agree more. The sphere of influence. I always tell everyone has a sphere of influence. And those spheres of influence change over time. They get bigger. They might get smaller. There's the parable in the New Testament that Jesus tells about the master who went out of town and he left one of his servants with 5 talents, which is a unit of money. One of his servants with 2 talents and one with 1. Why did he choose to give those? Well, who knows? Any number of reasons could have existed. But one thing I always pray is, God, I don't know how many talents, so to speak, you've given me. I just want to make sure, as the parable finishes, I just want to make sure that I double it. Because the one who had 5 came back, and he came back, gave the master 10. Well done, good and faithful servant. The one with 2, he doubled it. Well done. But the one who had 1, he didn't double it. He buried it to make sure that he didn't lose any. And the master called him a wicked servant. So I was like, I don't know how many talents I have. Maybe I have 5. Maybe I have 2. Maybe I have 1. But I want to make sure that I double it. And so when it comes to the sphere of influence, I think of the kids who have come up to me in signing lines or wherever, Q&As, meet and greets. And they say, "Hey, I want to be a singer when I grow up. What should I do?" I'm like, "Well, do you sing? For starts, do you sing?" I do. I sing in my church. I sing in. Well, then you don't need to want to be a singer. You are a singer, and you don't. And this was a lesson I learned so many years ago, and it's so simple. It's just about blooming where you're planted, and it's become a cliche, but it's so true. I was very convicted one season in my life that I was spending too much time dreaming about what I wanted to be doing in the future, and therefore I was not doing anything that God had me doing, that God wanted me to be doing in the present. Right.
That's very profound. Dream
away, right? Have your dreams, make plans, knowing that a man. What's that verse in the Proverbs that a man plans? This is my
Proverbs 16:9.
You know it.
The mind of man plans his way, but the
Lord directs his steps.
It's my life.
16:9. Beautiful. I'm so glad you know that. 16:9.
Yeah.
Okay. That's okay. My address growing up was 916, so I can flip that.
There you go.
16:9. Proverbs 16:9. Remember that.
16:9 proverbial way.
Proverbial. Yes. Right. Knowing that, like I said, dream away, but don't dream so much that you don't attend to what God has currently in your lap.
Right.
Right?
So like life is what's happening while we're making plans.
Life is what's happening while we're making plans. So that was something that's beautiful. So that's something I needed to work through. And I just encourage other people like, hey, listen, if you want a record deal one day and you want to tour and be on the big stage, then shoot for the stars, man. But in the meanwhile, if you've got a sixth grade retreat that you need to be singing for, pour all of your energies into that. Faithful with little, then you'll be entrusted with much.
Wow.
So that's a word that I continually remind myself of, and I try to encourage other people with the same thing.
That's awesome, Aaron. So you had this breakout that you weren't expecting,
right?
The 05, 07, that whole thing we just talked about. And then from there, just for the overview, we're not going to spend a long, long time, but I mean, in 07, you wind up Artist of the Year, Song of the Year.
Artist of the year.
Bunch of stuff.
Not artist of the year,
you
but
were like
the new guy of the year.
GQ Man of the Year, Mr. Drive the Old Jeep of the Year. You were just like everything of the year. It was the year
My
of
Jeep
Aaron.
was still new then. It's not new anymore.
The year of Aaron, our friend. But
I wasn't home very much. I'll tell you that much. It was a busy year, and my youngest was only 1 year old. So that kind of gave. And my wife is incredibly capable, and she was my road manager for a while before my oldest was born, and then she stayed home with him, and so I missed a good bit of his first year of life. I was with him for his first step ever was in Central Park, New York City. We were together for that. A couple of weeks later, we were in Las Vegas, and he took 8 steps in a row on a bus in Las Vegas. And so I was with him for some of those things when he traveled with me. But I figured, you know what? He's one. He's not going to remember too much. But by 08, things started to slow down already. 07 was crazy. It was just a crazy busy year. And I've got a lot of colleagues who maintain that kind of schedule, and I don't know that I could do it. You know, I work hard, and I do my best to not say no to opportunities that are given me. We were talking about that earlier as well. I think when you were praying over our time about opportunities. I think that's, you know, I'm in a place where I want to be able to say yes to the opportunities that I believe God's bringing to me. And I need to, when I say I believe like that, to be very discerning about, God, is this an opportunity that you're bringing me? My friend Will Graham, Billy Graham's grandson, preaches a message from 1 Samuel that I love. He's been spending years going through 1 Samuel. And one of his messages is called not every open door is a door you should walk through. Something like that. Because we always talk about it's an open door. You know, God opened a door for me. He's like, well, there's a lot of open doors. It doesn't mean you should walk through them. And he talks about David, whenever he was hiding from Saul, when King Saul's pursuing him before David was crowned king. David's running for his life. He's hiding in a cave in southern, like on the shores of the Dead Sea in En-Gedi. And as Saul's pursuing him, lo and behold, Saul has to go to the bathroom, as people do, and he walks into the very same cave where David's hiding.
You're going to tell this story.
You're
going to tell this story.
I'm going to tell of all the stories.
On my podcast.
Well, that's as graphic as I'll get. It's just PG. Yeah. And so David's people are saying, David, this is your opportunity. God's delivered him into your hands. And David disagrees. He said, I would never raise my hand against the Lord's anointed. So yes, it was an open door, but it wasn't, in David's opinion, and I agree with him, it wasn't an open door from the Lord. And so I have to apply that to my own life. And every time there's an opportunity, we're getting away from your question. I apologize.
I'll get you back.
Get me back. Not every open door is of the Lord. So I think it's really important for us as followers of the Lord who say that we pray and that we're dependent upon his guidance and his leading, that we say, well, is this something that you want me to do? And so I toured a whole lot in 07. I've not toured as much since then, and I'm completely okay with that.
That's cool.
Yeah.
So your life changed dramatically.
It did.
I mean, just you went from Perimeter and doing the custom record breakout song to
a label deal, but then kind of a bump up into this amazing exposure. We mentioned new artist of the year, song of the year, etc., and are still living on the power of that in a whole lot of ways. But life changed, and how did that challenge you? I mean, obviously, physically, the travel and family and all that, was spiritually, and maybe from that answer, take us into even your current spiritual motivations and what's been important to you throughout this last 12 years of being a public worship leader, Christian artist, songwriter dude.
Spoke to a dear friend of mine a couple weeks ago. I mentioned that the Perimeter Church's 40th anniversary. My friend Hayden, who used to play guitar for me in our college band not when we were in college, but we played for the college ministry. And he said, "Man, I've often thought, and just praying about you, and often thought that I could never do what you do with the amount of travel. Couldn't do it." And I said, "Man, it's a calling." And he said, "I've often wondered, it's got to be a calling. It's got to be something that God's placed on your heart to do, that he gives." It goes back to that verse, he's not going to call you to something that he doesn't give you the strength to do. And I feel like God gives me the strength and the excitement to do what he's placed in my lap to do, and that involving the travel. And it's not just travel for the sake of travel. I'm not just going to places and just eating food and talking about how great the food is. I'm going with a purpose. I'm going to meet the people of a certain location and to share the gospel with them, and to share with them what God's placed in my heart. And often that's the church. And so to get excited about, man, I grew up in the church, and there's been times that I was stagnant. And I grew up in the church, and I was surrounded by people who were stagnant, who just were not developing in their relationship with the Lord. So even within the church, it's my honor and privilege, like John the Baptist yelling at the people of Israel, and from like wake up, repent, turn to the Lord. That's a bit what I feel. And every once in a while, you find yourself speaking to people outside the church, and you're saying, "Come into the welcome arms of God." So there's an excitement when it comes to that. And I think what helped when you talk about the change, in that moment, since I was 13, I would say, if you said, when did you feel the call of God in your life to do what you're doing right now? I'd have to go back to when I was 13. I watched a video on television of a live concert of Michael W. Smith. Chris Rodriguez playing that pink Stratocaster and everything. And I was like, that is cool. Here he is making music. This guy's playing piano and singing. There's two things that I do. And he's singing about God. I'm all about that. And it looks like a blast. It's like, I would do that if I could. And so every piano lesson, every scale that I did, every idea of let's write a song, it kind of had that goal in mind, in corresponding with the calling that I felt on my life. But honestly, John, I thought, what are the chances of that actually happening? That's why I went to college. That's why I got a music degree. That's why I took a job at a church. I said, surely this is not going to happen. What are the chances? But it was always the dream in the back of my mind. So when all of a sudden a record label says, "Hey, we want to sign you, and we're going to put you in connection with people in Nashville, like a booking agency and a management company," it was like, okay, here we go. This is what I've wanted to do since I was 13. Didn't think it was going to happen, but this is what I wanted to do since I was 13. So here we go. And if it were just singing country songs or pop songs, I don't think I could do it. I do it what I do is a very spiritual thing to me. That's what keeps me motivated. It's a very spiritual thing. It's a responsibility to communicate what I believe God wants me to communicate on any given day via any given song or any given tour or concert or whatever it is. It's a very spiritual thing.
So it's kind of prophetic is what I'm hearing, like kind of an in the moment, yet there's this calling to call people into a deeper relationship.
Yes.
Whether that's an introduction for the first time, but it is at least the re-invitation or re-inviting of people to reconnect with their relationship, if they grew up in the church or not.
Right.
But to go deep again. And
if by prophetic you mean the speaking of truth, then absolutely.
I do.
Yes.
I do, and I mean kind of in the moment.
Yeah. No, I do plan. I'm free to go somewhere, but I'm a planner. And so whether it's just making a set list, because, I've got advancing companies who's like, hey, we need the set list, or I need the guy, the band leader who's like, hey, we've got a different band and they need to know, we got a new bass player for this gig, this one gig, because our bass player is not available and he needs a list of songs because he needs to learn them. I need to take some time out in my day in any given moment to say, okay, I've got 45 minutes. What's the situation? It's an outdoor festival in Wisconsin. Okay, what time are we talking? 8 o'clock at night, or is it 4 o'clock in the afternoon? Oh, it's 4 o'clock in the afternoon. Am I first? Am I last? Oh, you're last. It's an early. So all these things make a difference in how I'm going to present the set list. Is it a worship event, or is it like they want like a high energy? Okay, so now I know all my details. I need to sit down and say what does that set list need to be? I need to live in the moment. I kind of like need to propel myself into the future and imagine, how's this set list going to feel? Is it dragging too much? Too many unfamiliar songs in a row? I played a couple of weeks ago at a fair in Pennsylvania. So yeah, some of the church members are going to come, but it's an outdoor, we're talking like, rides and what do you call those things? Ferris wheels and deep fried cotton candy, all that stuff. Yeah. So it's a community event, which means there's going to be a lot of unbelievers there. That changes the way I make a set list. That changes how I talk, how much I talk, what I say, because I just want to be very faithful to the audience that God puts in front of me.
Wow. Very, very cool. So you've been at this for a while. I looked up your catalog of songs on CCLI, and it looked like you had about 66 songs, which is more. Those are more than you've recorded, or are all those only what you've recorded on your albums so far? Because you co-write with people, Paul Balash, a bunch of people that you co-write with.
So it could be some other things. I mean, like on my... Now, you're talking CCLI, so you're talking about what's getting played in the church, right?
Mm-hmm. Or anything that's registered there.
Yeah. I mean, I got 8 albums, I think, and a couple EPs that would throw that number off. So you're looking at like 80 songs there, but they're not all going to be...
They're not all there, I don't think.
They're not all going to be church songs either, so...
Right. I don't think that matters. It's like just whatever's registered out of your catalog. So
these are things I should know.
Go back to your publisher.
He's in the next room.
Go back to Chad. Go back to Chad and say, okay, we need to clean up some of this CCLI stuff.
What's missing?
But anyway, I mean, what I was trying to get to really more was about your songwriting process and what it's like to co-write with some of these great people. And talk a little bit about your process.
A process has developed over the years. I started just writing my own stuff from start to finish, and that was the way it was. That was my only option, and I was probably proud about that in a little unhealthy way, so that when the first option to co-write, which I can tell you exactly what it was Jason Ingram, great writer, and I was hesitant. I was like, I don't really do. I write by myself, It's because I wasn't being cocky. That was all I knew. Like, I'm not sure I'm into this. It was such a great experience, and it's one of those things where the sum is greater than the... How's that phrase go? The sum is greater than the...
Yeah, the total is greater
sum
than
of the parts, or all that stuff. Yeah, that whole thing.
Like, it doesn't add up to as much as it adds up to.
Yeah, it's like 1 + 1 = 5 is what it felt like at the end of the day. Like, wow, that was wonderful. And so, I think the struggle that I know that I dealt with, that I think a lot of other people who are facing the option of co-writing might deal with, is, but I only get 50%, or I only get 33% of any potential proceeds. It's like, well, yeah, but, 33% of awesome is going to be more than 100% of not good at all.
Exactly.
So like that was eye-opening. Well, that makes a lot of sense. And and that wasn't the impetus. The impetus was just enjoying the experience and realizing that I come to the table with maybe one idea. And it's always good to come to the table with something, whether it's a musical idea or a theme. I got my iPhone right here, and that's one of the greatest tools for just jotting ideas down. I can jot down the notes really quick on a pad of paper. It's more so about I'm going to lose that piece of paper, or I'm going to lose that pad of paper, but I'm not going to lose, Lord willing, I'm not going to lose my phone. So I keep it all there. It's all backed up. And it's just full of these little 30-second ideas that are usually inspired by something that I read in the Word of God. And I'm reading through the Bible this year, so I'm in Jeremiah right now because the Old Testament's chronological, and I'm in Jeremiah. And every once in a while, there's just something that's like, oh, that is so good, and I'll underline it and I'll highlight it. And sometimes when you read those things, there seems to be a melody attached to it, at least in my brain. I'm not saying this is from the Lord. It could be a horrible melody, but it's a melody nonetheless. And it makes me think, boy, I would love to sing these words. In church, these words could be sung with vigor, and they'd be strong. I should jot it down. And maybe I go to the piano and I just kind of sing through a couple of versions. Just like I learned this from Paul Balash, just singing through the Psalms. Sit down at the piano or your guitar and just singing through these words out loud, and something kind of sticks, something resonates. And then, for example, yesterday I had a scheduled song write with a guy who was coming in from out of the country, actually, here in the same building, and we met and we talked and we got to know each other a little bit. And what's your journey? What's my journey? And because I had no clue who this guy was, which is usually difficult to start at ground zero when you don't know the person. I'll usually try to grab coffee beforehand just to get to know the person. But we got to know each other through the first hour. We didn't sing one note. We just talked. We had some coffee and we went into a time of prayer. And this is yesterday's process. It's not always this process, but this is a similar process to what, just getting, especially in worship, to say, let's not try to fabricate a worship song. Let's let it begin purely. So we talked about where we were and what God's teaching us, and we just went into a time of prayer. And out of that time it was just a sweet time of prayer back and forth. He prayed, just giving praise to God and praying over the hours that we had together. And I prayed, and he kind of moved to the piano and just started playing these chords and started singing something. It wasn't anything, not one word of what he sang or one melody of what he sang did we keep. But we did keep, he was playing, lo and behold, in 12/8. He started playing this song in 12/8 time.
No kidding.
In the key of C sharp. What?
How do you even count in 12? In
right.
C sharp.
In C sharp.
12/8 C sharp.
But it was beautiful.
Wow.
And he started singing something, and I sang something, that spawned a different idea in him. And then what we ended up with was a chorus. And we tweaked. As I listened to that recording, step one, it changed a little bit since then. But that became the one thing. And it's so important in a song to have a one thing that we're trying to gravitate around, one magnet that everything gravitates toward. And then the work begins, and you start digging. So what do we need to say in the verse? Okay, that might be second verse material. What should we then say in the first verse? Where do we need to come from so that we can, the arc, the journey can carry us through the end of the song so that it's satisfying to the listener, and it takes the listener on a journey. And that's where the work comes in. But if you don't have that thing, that concept at the beginning, then you're kind of starting from zero. And come with the concept, knowing that might spawn an idea in the other person. You always say that it takes 9 bad ideas to land on one good one. Mm-hmm. So it's just so freeing to say, okay, here's a bad idea, and I give you my idea. And you're like, oh, that's interesting. That's pretty bad. But what about this? Yeah. And eventually you come to something that you're both like, yes, that no one person ever would have come up with on their own.
So there's a vulnerability about co-writing, and you got to be willing to throw out the bad ideas, but kind of like, I think about it like ping pong or badminton or tennis. You're batting the ideas back and forth across the net, and what you wind up with, you're both happy, right?
Yes, absolutely. It's like every time you hit it, that ping pong ball gets more and more purified. Yeah. By the end of it, you have this solid gold. So you check your
beating it to death,
right? You check your ego at the door. I think you kind of have to, and you check your credentials at the door, and you just come in and say, hey, because even the best songwriters have bad days, and even the people you don't expect to bring anything or offer anything sometimes they have that gem.
Yeah.
And you have to say, hey, I don't care about your lack of credentials. You might have something that you might sit here like a bump on a log, but just your presence and what we talk about stirs creativity in me that never would have existed had you. How many sessions have I sat in on that I apologize at the end and I just say, man, I'm so sorry. I feel like I contributed nothing today. And everyone, unless they're just being kind, every single time I say that, the response is, no way, man. You contributed so much. What we talked about and this was so good, and we've got something great. And I think they mean it. And I'm always shocked by it on those days that I feel like, boy, I added nothing.
No, I think they're lying.
Thank you.
They're just being nice.
They're being nice.
Because you're like,
I've never written with any of them again.
You're an artist, you got a deal. So they're kissing
probably
out.
Right.
Totally. No, we all have those days. A friend of mine who is a writer over at Word, he's been writing as long as I have, 30 years, and he has a co-writing retreat twice a year. And it's interesting because there are about 40 people there. I've been twice, of all kinds of levels. Some that have a small handful who've been published, but most are aspiring, but they have something to contribute, right?
Yes.
Draw names literally out of a hat, and you're forced into a 3-way co-write.
Okay.
You get there like Thursday night for dinner and hang out, then Friday morning breakfast, and then your first co-write. And you're in a room with people, you may have met them or you might not have.
Sure.
But it's wild what happens, when people make themselves vulnerable, and then you do that again that afternoon, and then everybody presents the songs that night, and then you repeat the process the next day, and some crazy, crazy good songs. Some of my favorite I've ever written have come out of those moments with rank strangers, people of different, degrees of ability, right? And but yet the Holy Spirit shows up, and there's synergy, and there's power, and there's creativity, and it's an amazing thing. And even if the songs don't ever get placed anywhere, it's fun,
Yes, absolutely. And I've not been to one where they draw names out of the hat. That's fascinating. But I've been to a couple where they're like, extended 3 days or something like that. And Centricity's done a great job where they will strategically put together like, hey, we know this guy is a melody guy, and this guy is a words guy, and this guy is a new guy, and this girl is a new, whatever. And so you feel like you've got your bases covered when you walk into a room like that. And sometimes you're stepping on each other's toes, but there's so much grace. At least in the rooms, in the circles that I've run in, there's so much grace. And I think what makes it extra special at the end of the night when you talk about coming back together and playing all the songs that you wrote throughout the course of the day, in the circles that I run in, it's about worship. And so it's not just like, hey, that was a cool song. That made me smile. That made me laugh. That made me cry. It was like, even in your presentation of a song that you wrote this afternoon that you can barely remember because you just wrote it, we all just were thrust into the throne room of heaven. And that is why I love writing worship songs. It's transcendent. Yeah. It's something so much more than a great song or a great hook or great production. Hopefully it has those things. But I think even if it doesn't, and I know this is probably hotly contested, but even if it doesn't, I believe that it pleases the heart of the Lord. Because we're talking about kids. I've learned this through my middleman, Nicky, who's 8 years old, probably 2 years ago. He was walking through the house, mindlessly doing whatever he was doing. And he started singing a song, kind of half under his breath. And he was just singing my name. Daddy, 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 dad. And oh, I love you, daddy. It had no rhythm. It had no melody to speak of. Not anything that's going to win any awards, et cetera, et cetera. Most people would say it was a bad song, but it touched the heart of his daddy that my son would be singing about me. And I just had such a picture of these silly little offerings that we as worship leaders bring to our Heavenly Father. Now, some people, you say, well, this song's a #1 hit. This song won a Grammy. This song, I'm sorry, this song's not worth it. We're not even gonna pitch this. You need to go back and rethink those lyrics. Across the continuum of those songs, I believe that our Heavenly Father's heart is warmed. So, I mean, let that be an encouragement to those people who have received a lot of criticism for your songs. If it's written for the heart of God, I believe He's. Mm-hmm. It doesn't mean it's going to make it to the radio, but it's made it to the ears of God, and it's touched the heart of God. And let that be a challenge to those of us who think we're pretty hot stuff because our songs have received some awards. And we've got a plaque hanging on our wall that it's no better in God's heart or eyes than the silliest song that's ever been written for Him.
Dude, that's rich, and I believe that as well. And that any song inspired in the heart of anyone that worships God, whether they're a 3, 4, 5-year-old up to 95 or 105, it doesn't matter.
Right.
So thank you for pointing that out, because I really resonate with that. And being in the business I'm in, of really trying to help writers increase their effectiveness and take their skill level and their mindset and everything that they're doing to the level where it can really connect with more people. Sometimes people accuse me, of like despising the lesser, what we would say, in industry terms, the unpublishable kinds of songs. But I don't believe that at all. No. And I've written thousands of songs that will never see the light of day. And, you probably have, and anybody that writes consistently knows, but God's heart is pleased. And that's really what it's about in the end. It's all about him. It really, really is. So thank you for that comment.
So I am, to just continue on that for a second, I'm so glad that Chris Tomlin wrote How Great Is Our God, because it's been a part of my worship experience, So I'm glad that the songs that are played all over the world, the ones that are considered to have been, yes, this song is commercially viable, I'm glad they are. Because it's given me voice. It's put language to my heart, and then any song that's out there. So I'm not downplaying those. And on the converse side, if someone were to say, well, this, Aaron Shust said it warms the heart of God, so you have to publish it. Like, well, no, that's not true either.
I use a simple tool called a song continuum.
Okay.
And on the far left, it starts with those prayer closet, childlike, intimate expressions that we all should have, that will never be on the radio, because, the word commercial just means it's accessible by the greatest number of people. It doesn't mean it's dumbed down. It doesn't mean it's stupid. It doesn't mean it's wrong. It just means that the greatest number of people can access it very easily.
The populace, therefore popular, right?
Exactly. Yeah. So on that far left are those free form, the song of your son, walking through the kitchen, singing about his daddy.
Right.
And a lot of people, on the more charismatic Pentecostal side will have what we call prophetic or free form songs in the spirit or whatever that are never really intended to be repeated.
Right.
And I think that the real issue comes about when writers on that end of the spectrum, who may not really be so skilled in writing the 2.5, 3.5 minute radio song, feel that they should be commercialized when they're like, but I'm passionate and God's moving in it. And it's like, well, yeah, of course, but it's just a different kind of animal. So so good distinctions for people to make, along the lines on this whole thing. Well, I tell you what, as we kind of bring this thing in for a landing, this has been very rich, and I've loved our conversation, and I know we could go another hour.
Sure.
And so thank you for all of your comments. But do you have any words for the aspiring songwriters out there who look at your life and go, oh my gosh, Aaron, he just had this breakthrough thing. God did it. He wasn't even trying, and God did it. So see, God does drop all this on us, and all that kind of stuff. I mean, what would you say to those who are outside the Christian music bubble but are looking in, peering in through the glass, thinking, gee, I wish I could be there too?
Well, I'm not sure how inspiring this is, but I
can edit.
When you talk about people on the outside of the Christian bubble, whether they're believers or not, but they're not engaged in the songwriting process, I would say, just to reiterate into what we've already said, it is an art form. It is a craft that needs to be developed, and it needs to be honed. And criticism is a good thing. And because it is a spiritual thing, and because it's everything we just talked about, that it's pleasing to the heart of God, regardless of the quality that we place upon it, because of that spiritual side of it, it's easy to completely take away the whatever you want to call it, the business side of it, the commercial side of it, like you said. But it is in fact a craft. I've joked about people who have said, "Oh yeah, this new mechanic in town is great. He's a great Christian, loves Jesus." I'm like, "Well, that's fantastic. Can he fix cars?" I don't care if he loves Jesus if he can't fix my car. I care that he loves Jesus, but I'm not going to give him my money and entrust him with my vehicle if he can't fix it. So there's that side of it as well. And this is, we're trying to create something that we call a good song. And so that's why I prefaced this by saying I'm not sure that's the most inspiring answer, but we're trying to find that balance. I talk often about wearing two different hats. I wear the business hat sometimes because it's a business, and I'm responsible for stewarding what God's given me to do. And the other side is it's a ministry, and there's sometimes especially when I'm in concert and dealing with meeting the promoter beforehand and the catering lady in the back, and I take off the business hat. And I just put on the ministry hat. I'm like, hey, you know what? Don't worry about the fact that you forgot to bring the whatever. It's okay. We're going to be fine because we're just here to serve today. And, we'll deal with that on Monday, when stuff goes downhill, whatever it is. So and I know you're talking about songwriting, but I think the encouragement would be, and it's more of a challenge, to not completely, talk about throwing out the baby with the bathwater, not completely dismiss the need for quality. The Old Testament talks about those who are skilled will play before kings. Okay? Not those who have a really nice heart for Jesus will play before kings. Those who are skilled will play before kings, and or stand before kings, maybe is what it says. And even in the making of the tabernacle, the mobile tabernacle that went through the desert for 40 years, when they were constructing it, God gave instruction to Moses to find the most skilled craftsmen that you have to do the embroidery, to make the pieces of gold that will decorate the tabernacle. Find the most skilled people and hire them. And so I take that as a challenge. What does that make me do? That makes me practice. I've got a Christmas tour coming up, and these songs that I wrote and recorded, they're hard to play. And every year, come about October, November, I have to start practicing, warming my fingers back up again, because I want to be excellent before the Lord, right? Mm. So that's my challenge.
That's awesome, Aaron. So you've got a new album, Love Made a Way. Mm-hmm. So you're alive.
It's live,
worship, yeah. And you've done a couple of familiar tunes, but some other awesome. I've been reviewing it yesterday and today, getting ready for today. Love the video too. It looks great. It's fantastic.
Thank you.
Recorded it here in Nashville. And
yeah. It was cool to revisit some songs that I've been doing over the years, and I remember my dad listening to "My Hope Is in You." On the new album, and he said, "Is it okay that I like this version better than the original version?" I said, "That's absolutely okay." And I love hearing, the vocals, because we had about 60 people singing along. The parts that I would do a little descant on the original, but they kept singing the original chorus. It was kind of cool to hear both of that. Like, I haven't heard that before. And the girl who actually wrote that song, that's another thing, is me being willing to cover a song that I had nothing to do with. And that's happened a couple of times now, where my pride had to go from, no, I only write my own songs by myself, to, okay, I'm willing to collaborate, to, okay, as an artist, am I willing to sing a song that I had nothing to do with the creation of this song? And My Hope Is in You is one of those that I'm so privileged to have been able to sing the truth of that song night after night. Your word throws doubt far away. I won't be shaken by drought or storm. April Jesbray wrote these words, and she was able to sing along with me in this recording. So that's really special that she was singing harmonies with me, and that's in the video too. It was a lot of fun.
Well, it's great, and I heartily recommend it to everybody listening. This has been a rich conversation, and just thank you so much.
For the opportunity.
I like to, at the end of our shows, to take just a moment to acknowledge my guest and just say, I want to acknowledge you, Aaron, for the work of God, of course, from before the foundations of the earth. He saw you and planned your every breath, but, your response to him, even as a young boy, that brought you, all the way to this moment. Your life, your music, your calling didn't happen just 12 years ago.
Right.
And you acknowledged that earlier. So I just want to thank you on behalf of all the people worldwide who have been blessed by your music and your songs, and you as a man of God, as a child of God, and the Spirit of God that moves through your life, through your eyes, through your words, through everything that you're all about. And so thank you, man. God bless you. And we just pray for continued blessings, continued opportunities, like we prayed even before the recording today, that God will continue to enlighten your heart, open the eyes of your heart. Thank you, Paul Balash. Thank you, Paul the Apostle, before that.
Yes.
That, that he would continue to reveal to you day by day that the richness of his presence in every way, and that would enlighten every aspect of your life. So we bless you and we thank you. And this has been just a great day, another great episode of the Song Revolution podcast. I'm going to be watching as things progress for you. So,
cool.
Dude, thanks again, man.
I received that with thanksgiving. Thank you. It's encouraging.
Right.
Thank you, John.
Thanks for joining us today, and we'll catch you on the show next time.
Thanks for being here today for the Song Revolution podcast from Nashville Christian Songwriters. We exist to empower you and to bring you some of the greatest inspiration, insights, and important people from the Christian music world to help you write your best and to be heard as the songwriter that you were born to be. Be sure to like us on Facebook, follow us over on Twitter and Instagram, and connect with us through our Facebook group called Successful Christian Songwriters. Until next time, I'm John Chisholm calling you to a Song Revolution.